This has to be fair. Because if you want to only hear your opinion, I can just condemn Hamas and go home.
So, by popular recommendation, the mic is going to stay in the hand. The audio just comes out way better that way, and because we're doing 2 takes of this video, I am hoping that you can't hear the fan in the background. Maybe you can, let me know. But yes, hello. I am going to be trying to take a very serious tone for this video because it's a serious video. I just want to preface that I do use humor as a coping mechanism, so at no point am I trying to say that anything about this is funny. Nothing about this is funny. It's just that my brain cannot always fathom the level of evil and suffering that there is in the world. I would prefer to just make it known that this is a very serious subject, and I want it to give all the due respect that it deserves. I do have a script in front of me. There are going to be loads of sections in this video, and I'm going to try my best to tell you my thoughts on Palestine. I would like to also say that this will be biased. I have a biased opinion, and I think that that's, important for context when people watch opinion pieces like this. This is an opinion piece, and I am biased. I am heavily biased towards the freedom of Palestinians, and that should be known from the get-go. Having said that, I would also like to make it known that some of you watching this video may not be welcome. I just want to make absolutely clear who I mean. Number 1, depraved and bloodthirsty Zionists. If that fits your description, I would prefer that you did not leave your depraved and bloodthirsty comment. Please do that on your own time, not on my channel. You are welcome to watch, of course. I can't really stop you from doing that, but I can tell you that I would not like to know your depraved and bloodthirsty opinion. Second, Haram police. I know I look really low-key now, but that does not mean that this will be the only way that I dress for the rest of the video. I'm doing 2 takes, and so I will probably look different later, and I would like to tell said Haram police to take a good look, because you get one look, right? That's fine. The next look is a sin, and you can also leave. You bring all of us down. You slow us down. You're not welcome here. Third, and this is a slightly more, ironically ambiguous sort of group, fence sitters on this specific situation. Now, I understand that some fence sitters may just be, underinformed, or they just may not get the whole picture of what's going on in Palestine and what is happening to the Palestinian people. Like, I understand that. But there are some of you that really grind my gears because you sit on the fence because you know the definition of a lot of technical terms and jargon. I just want you to know that you're not comprehensive no matter how many definitions you know. I understand the merit of semantics and why we, have to define our terms, why we, in academics and stuff, define our terms and, try to explain what things mean. But when we're trying to have a conversation, I don't have the rest of my life for you to mansplain to me what each and every word that you are saying means so that I can understand what you're saying. And it's not like a critical think piece that I'm submitting to you as a professor for you to review and, all of that. If you are going to semantically sit on the fence as if it's a high horse that somehow belongs to you, I would suggest that perhaps you leave with the other 2 groups. Alright, now that they're all gone, and they've scurried away, I presume, welcome to the video. We're going to be talking about, hopefully, a free Palestine, and why you should support Palestinian emancipation. I have spent a few weeks researching and writing up a script, and I thought that like the more personal parts of this video I would record today, and then the more evidence heavy part of the videos I would record at another time, because it's quite difficult to talk about because it's a big subject and it requires a lot of like tact and not just like joke making and being silly. So yeah, let's get into it, I guess. The first part of this video I wanted to kind of dedicate to a nice little starter, if you will, of the video, where we just talk about authoritarianism and how it affects people's psychology. And I wanted to start with a psychological experiment, actually, that was conducted by Stanley Milgram. Stanley Milgram, a psychologist at Yale University, carried out one of the most famous studies of obedience in psychology. He conducted an experiment focusing on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. So in 1963, he examined justifications for acts of genocide offered by those accused at the World War II Nuremberg war criminals trials. I just did what that guy told me to. That was what they often offered as their defense, that someone in a higher authority position told them to do it, so they did it, and that they were just following the orders from their superiors. So the experiments themselves began in July 1961, a year after the trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem, Adolf Eichmann presumably being a Nazi. Milgram devised the experiment to answer the question, could it be that Eichmann and his million accomplices in the Holocaust were just following orders? Could we call them all accomplices? And he said that in 1974. Milgram wanted to investigate whether Germans were particularly obedient to authority figures, as this was a common explanation for the Nazi killings in World War II. Milgram selected participants for his experiment by newspaper advertising for male participants to take part in a study of learning at Yale University. The procedure was that the participant was paired with another person, and they drew lots to find out who would be the learner and who would be the teacher. The draw was fixed so that the participant was always the teacher and the learner was one of Milgram's confederates, or like research assistants, or like they were posing as a participant when the participants were being selected. The learner, for example, a man named Mr. Wallace, was taken into a room and had electrodes attached to his arms, and the teacher and the researcher went into a room next door that contained an electric shock generator and a row of switches marked from 15 volts, a slight shock, to 375 volts, which is a danger severe shock, to 450 volts, which is just called XXX. The shocks in Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments were not real. The learners were actors who were part of the experiment and did not actually receive any shocks. However, the teachers, the real participants of the study, believed the shocks were real, which was crucial for the experiment to measure obedience to authority figures even when it involved causing harm to others. The aim of the experiment was that Milgram was interested in researching how far people would go in obeying an instruction if it involved harming another person. Stanley Milgram was interested in how easily ordinary people could be influenced into committing atrocities, for example, Germans in World War II. This experiment done exactly how it was done at the time, done today, would actually be considered unethical because the participants were lied to. Obviously, you can sort of obscure information from participants if you don't want them to know a certain part of an experiment, as long as it's not harmful, but like you can't outwardly lie to participants when you're conducting an experiment. for ethics purposes. There's also a lot about how this experiment, may have caused some emotional distress to the participants who were watching or hearing rather the fake shocks affecting someone in a different room, because the shocks were sound recordings of people like screaming in pain or whatever, and they were in a different room, and that was what would play when the shocks were administered. Pretty foggy in terms of ethics. It's probably not considered very ethical, but yeah, that's the ethics sort of dispute about this experiment. And actually the ethics were written up after this experiment. Not that discounts that criticism. Participants were 40 males aged between 20 and 50 whose jobs ranged from unskilled to professional from the New Haven area. They were paid $4.50 for just turning up. At the beginning of the experiment, they were introduced to another participant, a fellow experimenter selected by Stanley Milgram, unbeknownst to the participants. The experimenter was always the learner. There was also an experimenter dressed in a grey lab coat, played by an actor, who was not Stanley Milgram. 2 rooms in the Yale Interaction Laboratory were used, one for the learner with an electric chair and another for the teacher and experimenter with an electric shock generator. So the learner, Mr. Wallace, was strapped to the chair with electrodes. After he had learned a list of word pairs given to him to learn, like he had to learn word pairs, the teacher tests him by naming a word and asking the learner to recall its partner or pair from the list of 4 possible choices. The teacher is told to administer an electric shock every time the learner makes a mistake, increasing the level of shock each time. There were 30 switches on the shock generator marked from 15 volts, slight shock, to 450 or danger severe shock, or XXX as we saw earlier. The learner gave mainly wrong answers on purpose because they were actors, and for each of these the teacher gave him an electric shock. When the teacher refused to administer the shock, the experimenter, who was also an actor, was to give a series of orders or prods to ensure that the shocks continued. The shocks, then they weren't real shocks. There were 4 prods, and if one was not obeyed, then the experimenter, Mr. Williams, read out the next prod, and so on. And the prods were, please continue. The experiment requires you to continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice but to continue. These prods were used in order and begun afresh for each new attempt at defiance. The experimenter also had 2 special prods available. This could be used as required by the situation. 1. Although the shocks may be painful, there is no permanent tissue damage, so please, go on. And 2. Whether the learner likes it or not, you must go on until he has learned all the word pairs correctly, so please go on. This is the test. This is the test that all of these teachers who are participants are going through, to see if they'll shock their learner. So the results: 65%, 2/3 of the participants, continued to the highest level of 450 volts. All the participants continued to 300 volts. All of them. 100% of them. Milgram did more than one experiment. He carried out 18 variations of his study. All he did was alter the situation to see how it affected the obedience. So, the conclusion of this experiment: the individual explanation for the behavior of the participant would be that it was something about them as people that caused them to obey, and a more realistic explanation is that the situation they were in influenced them and caused them to behave in the way that they did. Some aspects of the situation may have influenced their behavior, include the formality of the location, the behavior of the experimenter, and the fact that it was an experiment for which they had volunteered and been paid. Ordinary people are likely to follow orders given by an authority figure, even to the extent of killing an innocent human being. Obedience to authority is ingrained in all of us from the way we are brought up. People tend to obey orders from other people if they recognize their authority as morally right or legally based. This response to legitimate authority is learned in a variety of situations, for example in the family, school, and workplace. Milgram summed up in the article the perils of obedience. Like, I do want to say also that he wasn't trying to find an excuse for the crimes that were happening during World War II that the Nazis were doing. This wasn't supposed to be an excuse. He genuinely wanted to measure like how far obedience goes to someone you respect and believe in and trust to give you the right order. I just want to clarify that, like, this is the point of even bringing up this experiment, is to like start with this to understand the rest of the topic. The legal and philosophic aspects of obedience are of enormous import. They say very little about how most people behave in concrete situations. I set up a simple experiment at Yale University to test how much pain an ordinary citizen would inflict on another person, simply because he was ordered to by an experimental scientist. Stark authority was pitted against the subjects, or participants' strongest moral imperatives against hurting others, and with the subjects' ears ringing with the screams of the victims, authority won more often than not. The extreme willingness of adults to go to almost any lengths on the command of an authority constitutes the chief finding of the study and the fact most urgently demanding explanation. Milgram went on to make an agency theory. He explained the behavior of his participants by suggesting that people have two states of behavior when they are in a social situation. The autonomous state, people direct their own actions and then they take responsibility for the results of those actions, and the agentic state. People allow others to direct their actions and then pass off the responsibility for the consequences to the person giving the orders. In other words, they act as agents for another person's will. Milgram suggested that two things must be in place for a person to enter the agentic state. The person giving the orders is perceived as being qualified to direct other people's behavior, that is, they are seen as legitimate. And second, the person being ordered about is able to believe that the authority will accept responsibility for what happens. In this condition, the individual no longer views himself as responsible for his own actions, but defines himself as an instrument for carrying out the wishes of others. And that was said by Milgram in his 1974 book. Agency theory says that people will obey an authority when they believe that the authority will take responsibility for the consequences of their actions. This is supported by some aspects of Milgram's evidence. For example, when participants were reminded that they had a responsibility for their own actions, almost none of them were prepared to obey. In contrast, many participants who were refusing to go on did so if the experimenter said that he would take responsibility. According to Milgram, the danger to human survival inherent in our makeup. And what is it that we have seen? No aggression, for there is no anger, vindictiveness, or hatred in those who shocked the victim. Something far more dangerous is revealed. The capacity for man to abandon his humanity, indeed, the inevitability that he does so as he emerges his unique personality into larger institutional structures. I just wanted to start with that experiment because I think it really does contextualize what we're going to be discussing, which is Palestinian emancipation. This is how I think about it, how I've always thought about it, why I care, and why you should care. I'm going to try and not get too heated while discussing this because I understand people's emotions. Like, I get it. Like, I just read that whole fucking experiment to you and like, I understand. I get it. Okay? That doesn't give you the excuse to ignore real suffering. Completely ignore that and completely like release yourself of all responsibility to like pay attention and try to stop it. Not just on a social level that we're people and we should care about other people, and it's important that this doesn't happen to tens of thousands of people. This happening to them should give you an individual fear also. I don't know how you feel safe knowing this is going on and happening to tens and thousands of people. Like, maybe that's selfish of me to say. It probably is pretty selfish of me to say, but like, how do you feel safe knowing that tens of thousands of people have been killed in this? It's not a conflict, it's a genocide. I'm going to call it a genocide. And it's specifically why I brought up the semantic bitches in the beginning. It is a genocide. That's what we're going to call it, and that's how we're going to address it for the rest of the fucking video. It's a really, really draining topic to talk about because people are so angry about it, and they're understandably angry. The other side of the anger is just like stupidity. Like it's insane, bloodthirsty, depraved stupidity, and I hate it. The next part of this, I'm just gonna use what I've talked about as a learning tool to try and explain why I feel the way that I do. I have thought about, existence for a long time, my own existence, because I've, quite selfishly been just sort of evaluating myself for the last few years. I truly believe that our reality is completely subjective. What you experience is different to what I experience, and that our reality is a collection of our memories. It's been heavily studied in neuroscience and in psychology that when people start to lose their memories, they stop being the same person. So I believe that the reality we experience is very much influenced and created by our memories as much as us experiencing the passage of time and existence. I have a really hard time processing what the people in Palestine are what their reality is right now, and it's really, really hard for me to fathom, and at no point do I want to minimize that. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it, but it's really hard for me to fathom it, and I just want you to let that sink in. Our realities are a construction of our memories, and some of these people, their entire memory, their entire, if you think about it as a data bank, their entire data bank of reality is filled with death, pain, suffering, loss. I think it's important. For contextualizing how horrific the situation is, and I don't understand how people can't recognize how fucking horrific it is. It's so fucking horrific. I also kind of want to explain that all of our brains, because of the limited period of our existence, all of our brains take shortcuts to try and understand things, and sometimes those shortcuts are necessary, especially if you need to act in a stressful situation or in a situation of danger. And I want to let you know that if you are watching at this point of the video and maybe you aren't completely convinced that Palestinians deserve emancipation, I want you to understand that I know that your brain has taken the shortcuts to reach that conclusion. I know. And, likewise, from my bias, my brain has taken shortcuts to reach the conclusion that I have reached. But I would also like to present my view in the hope that you will understand just how horrific the situation is. And I mean that quite genuinely. I know I take the piss a lot, I know I swear a lot, I know I, laugh at a lot of horrible things, but I really want to impress upon you that this is a serious situation, and you should take this extremely fucking seriously, not just for the safety of those people who you should care about, but also for your own personal safety. I don't know how personal safety doesn't even come into question when you consider that a government is doing this to tens and thousands of people with financial backing from other governments as well as corporate entities. Do you not understand how fucking dangerous that is for all of us? For everyone. Anyway, I promise to present my stance and how I think about this with as much of a measured sort of tone that I can, and I'm gonna try and make sure that my sources are sources that are generally considered trusted sources. Transition time. Hi everyone. I'm gonna try and stay super relaxed for the next part of the video because it's super fucking hot today and the fan makes way too much noise. Not for the video, but for my partner next door. So I can't have it running. So yeah, if I get heated, that's why. I hope you like the makeup, I hope you like how I look, and we're gonna dive right into the next part of the video because in the last part we talked about the Stanley Milgram experiment and exactly how it might affect this topic. I also kind of wanted to go over like the living memory concept, the idea that I explained in the last part of the video where I was saying that like I believe that realities are made up of a collection of memories. I just want for the rest of the video for everyone to take into account what is in the living memories of the people in Palestine right now. What is in the living memories of the many children that populate Gaza and the many adults that also populate Gaza. Our first topic that we are going to touch upon today is that war is romanticized. This isn't a new concept. I think that a lot of people understand that people romanticize war and why it's bad. In terms of history, war has always been romanticized. You always have these like fictional depictions of the shining white knight that goes off into battle to fight the evils of the world and return to his, you know, beloved or betrothed or whoever he gave his napkin to or whatever the fuck. The idea of people fighting and dying for something has always been kind of appealing as a concept, but the truth of the matter is that no one wins in war. War always amounts to losses, not the good kind. Never the good kind. I am of the opinion, you know, with my small brain, normal person brain, war should always be avoided. War should always be like a last resort. There's rarely ever any gain in war. I know in the previous part of the video I called the Palestinian genocide because it is a genocide, and that's what I believe based on what I've been viewing over the last 10 or so months as well as the last like 29 years of my life. I don't think that you can really call this a war because war implies, at least to me, from like someone who's studied history and has studied religion, war to me implies like a vaguely equal battle or circumstances. The two sides that are at war, or the multiple sides that are at war, are on like equal level. The Palestinians have never been on the same level as Israel. Like, they have never been. I don't even know where the assumption that this is a war comes from, really. I don't consider it a war. War as a concept is romanticized by two things in the modern day: religion and popular media. Ironically, the two things that Karl Marx said, you know, governments use them to control people. Romanticizing like popular media, films, TV shows, the way we retell history, the way we depict historical wars, especially from the perspective of the victors, and as well as religion. Like, I think that religion, you can't really argue that religion doesn't romanticize war. It's always been used as fuel to lead wars, start wars, and you know what I mean. I think sometimes when we witness a people being destroyed, we like to rationalize the conflict as either righteous on one side and evil on the other side. There is nothing righteous about the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land. There is nothing righteous in the killing of Palestinian civilians. For the last 10 or so months, the Palestinian people have been experiencing a genocide at the hands of an occupying force that has killed tens and thousands of their civilians, destroyed their hospitals, destroyed their universities and schools and other places of education, destroyed their architecture, their mosques, their fields, their land, their animals. Understand that they are portraying their conflict as righteous, and there's nothing righteous about it. I hope you understand that like while you're intaking all this propaganda and like internalizing all of that information, you're not on the right side for doing this. I hope you know that. We're going to talk a little bit about the media and how the media has been dehumanizing Palestinians for like as long as I can remember. A sentiment that I understood from when I was a small child, like from when I was a small kid who would go to madrasa and go to Islamic school and like hear things on the news about Muslims being evil all the time. Something that I understood from a really young age is that the Palestinian life seemed to not be as valuable as other human lives. Like that is a sentiment that I have been told, that I have witnessed, that I have, deduced from news media, as well as like from hearing it from other people, that the Palestinian life really isn't worth as much as the rest of our lives. And I think it's deeply, deeply fucked up that this is the sentiment that a lot of Muslims have during Tarawih and like when we would do du'as and stuff at the end of prayers and things like that. We would always be praying for the people of Palestine because the world did not recognize the Palestinian life as equal to other human lives. Almost every Ramadan that I have participated in, almost every Tarawih prayer that I have participated in, I was praying for Palestine. I was praying for Gaza or I was praying for Palestine. Pretty much every Ramadan, something was happening to the people of Palestine. That's every year. That's 2 Eids every year. And somehow you want me to believe that the Zionist cause, the Zionist occupying cause, is somehow justified. I stopped listening to the Zionist movement a long time ago. Let's just say that. I want to take one example of how this devaluing of life is sometimes phrased, not explicitly, but implicitly. One of the ways in which the Palestinian life is devalued that I want to highlight in recent times, since October 7th, 2023, is the IOFs or IDFs, we'll call them IOF because they are occupying forces. The IOF has termed their strikes, their explosive strikes, as precise in many different locations. I'll read one part of this BBC article titled US says Israel must open over Gaza school strike, BBC. The Israeli military said it had conducted precise strike on a Hamas compound in the school, but Gaza's Hamas-run government media office denied the claim. The US called on Israel to identify publicly the Hamas fighters it said it had killed, just as the Israeli military gave the names of the 9 of them. We've got another article with the title, and this is from the Jerusalem Post, "The precise strike in Syria was an important proof of Israel's strength. Israel's precision-guided munition likely killed group of children playing football in Gaza, weapons experts say. Israeli attack that killed aid workers consistent with multiple precision strikes, analysis shows. Innocent aid staff scrambled between exploding cars as they tried to escape IDF's precision strikes. Gaza strikes precise. There's no indiscriminate bombing, but mistakes can happen." How do you mistakenly take the lives of over 40,000 fucking people, including journalists and medical workers? And children? In what sense of the word precise? Like, in what world are they precise? Please explain to me how Israel can claim that their explosive munitions are precise when they take the lives of over 40,000 people, civilians, or aid workers, or journalists. The only way in which you can use this precise word is if you don't consider Palestinians to be human beings equal to other human beings, or if you don't consider them to be human at all. And there are loads of examples of this throughout like Israeli propaganda that has come out since October 7th. This is just one example. They don't consider Palestinians to be people. They count them as acceptable losses. They're considered like collateral or expendable, as if like these people are just numbers and not real fucking people. Hamas are using the Palestinian people as human shields. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Also assume that most of you have seen at least a fictional hostage situation happen. Yeah, all civilians in a hostage situation are considered hostages. So all Palestinian citizens that are being killed, all of them are considered hostages, not just the people that Hamas have kidnapped from Israel. And if you don't consider Palestinian civilians equally as hostages, you're devaluing Palestinian life. You understand that, like, in a hostage situation, when there's Hamas involved, it's not just the people they took from Israel that are hostages, it's also the civilians that are in Palestine that have no self-determination, no equal human rights to everyone else, that are also supposed to be considered hostages. In an instance where you have a hostage situation, you don't kill the people that are being held as hostages or being used as human shields. You're not the righteous force for killing human shields. Them using people as human shields is not an excuse for the Israeli government to kill all the civilians in Palestine. People in Palestine should also be considered hostages in this scenario that you're sort of constructing about this situation. It also ignores the fact that, like, the Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, are basically kept in, like, an open-air prison. There's been, like, a multi-year blockade in Gaza. The supplies aren't consistent. They rely on the Israeli government to ensure their human rights and their human necessities like food and water, sanitary supplies, sanitation in general. So the fact that everyone considers the people that were taken from Israel to be hostages, but not also the civilians in Palestine to be hostages, is really fucking telling for how you value Palestinian life. A super honest question, and it can come across a little bit selfish, as I've mentioned earlier in this video, but, like, I just want you to consider it because it's an honest question for me. If Israel can do this to the Palestinian people with the support of the US, with the support of the UK, with the support of international fucking companies that have their own money and we give money to, actually, like Starbucks and like the McDonald's. If they can do this to the Palestinian people with almost no pushback, like it's still fucking happening for over 10 months, what exactly makes you think that they can't do that to you? We're, like, especially as brown people, we're not that different to Palestinian people. I don't know if you know that. Especially if you're brown and Muslim, you're not that different. If you can stand by and watch this, passively happen to Palestinian people, like, you aren't safe either. You went to madrasa just like them. You learned Alif Ba just like them. You fasted through Ramadan, you celebrated Eid with your family, you eat similar food to them, you dress in a similar way to them, many women probably wear hijab like them. You're Muslims like them. You're brown Muslims like them. So I don't understand how anyone feels safe knowing that, like, a whole fucking country, a whole fucking government can do this with the support of 2 other governments minimum and, like, corporations. How do you feel safe? I don't know, man. I don't know. I also want to talk about, in terms of media particularly, the media is kind of disproportionate for one simple thing that's been happening to Palestinian journalists since the start of October 7th. And that is that they have been systematically killed. They have been systematically killed in this genocide. And I want to read out a stat that I saw, actually. And it's not just journalists, it's been journalists as well as their families that have been killed. There is some speculation that these journalists have been actively targeted, assassinated, as well as their families. I'm inclined to believe that based on how many of them have died. As of June 16th, 2024, 108 journalists and media workers were confirmed killed. 103 of them Palestinian, 2 Israeli, and 3 Lebanese. 32 journalists were reported injured, 2 journalists were reported missing, and 46 were reported arrested. Multiple assaults, threats, cyber attacks, censorship, and killing of family members have also been discovered. The CPJ, which is a dedicated journalist organization, is also investigating numerous unconfirmed reports of other journalists being killed, missing, detained, hurt, or threatened, and of damage to media officers and journalists' homes. And I'll leave the source for that down below. I would like to again point out that these are people who are working real media jobs, reporting real war crimes in real time on the floor in Gaza since October 7th, and they have lost their lives. I would really ask you to question why. Why so many journalists have been killed during this time, if Israel's cause is righteous in any way, shape or form. Why so many journalists have died on the ground when they are literally a protected person during these times. Like, journalists and media workers operating in areas of armed conflict must be treated and protected as civilians and allowed to perform their work without undue interference. Attacks intentionally targeting journalists as civilians constitute war crimes. Let's get on to another point of contention in terms of like post 9/11 rhetoric. Does anyone remember WMDs? WMDs, it was like George Bush's favorite thing to start like fucking up the Middle East. Weapons of mass destruction. It was George W. Bush's favorite thing, and it's actually reminded me of my favorite political clip, which I've seen many times, but we'll insert here. And basically, I'll give you some context for this clip. On 14th December 2008, Iraqi journalist Muntadhar al-Zaidi removed his shoes and threw them at United States President George W. Bush during a joint press conference with Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki in Baghdad, Iraq. Bush quickly ducked, avoiding being hit by either of those shoes. You are my hero. I hope George W. Bush has to dodge shoes for the rest of his fucking life for what he did. I wish way worse things on him, but this is YouTube and I'm trying to keep like a positive face while discussing this. Who remembers WMDs? Weapons of mass destruction. Oh, you know, the Middle East has weapons of mass destruction. This is why we have to crack down on these Islamic extremists in the Middle East. A very simple question, specifically about the Israeli occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. Who has the WMDs in this situation? One side has pipe bombs that they make at home, and the other side has WM-fucking-Ds, weapons of mass fucking destruction. One such weapon, just the one weapon, and then we're going to move on, because I really can't, is called white phosphorus. Now, you might ask, what is white phosphorus? So white phosphorus is a chemical, waxy, solid substance typically appearing yellowish or colorless, and some have described its odor to resemble garlic. It ignites instantly upon contact with oxygen, which for reference is 18 to 20% of the atmosphere and also is in each of our blood cells. Plants breathe it out. Most mammals on land breathe it in. We need it to survive, and this chemical ignites with contact of it. And it's 20% of the atmosphere. It ignites instantly upon contact with oxygen. It is often used by militaries to illuminate battlefields, as if they can't illuminate the battlefield with anything else. Anyway, to generate a smokescreen and as an incendiary. So it's meant to be used and like to set things and shit on fire and destroy shit. Once ignited, white phosphorus is very difficult to extinguish. It sticks to surfaces like skin and clothing. White phosphorus is harmful to humans by all routes of exposure. The smoke from burning phosphorus is also harmful to the eyes and respiratory tract. You know, the thing we need to breathe and live. Due to the presence of phosphoric acids and phosphine. White phosphorus can cause deep and severe burns, penetrating even through bone. After exposure, the priority is to stop the burning process. Caution must be exercised to avoid secondary exposure of medical personnel from victims suffering from white phosphorus burns. White phosphorus can reignite during or after initial treatment due to the contact with oxygen. Use clean water, medically prepared saline throughout the process of healing this horrific fucking chemical weapon. After the horrors of the world wars, where chemical weapons, saw mass usage, especially during trench warfare, where, gases like mustard gas would be thrown into the trenches and people would hack up their lungs because they would stop being able to breathe unless they wore gas masks. Oh, they're not supposed to be used. Right. The use of white phosphorus may violate Protocol 3 on the use of incendiary weapons of the Convention of the Certain Conventional Weapons, CCCW, in one specific instance, if it is used on purpose as an incendiary weapon directly against humans in a civilian setting. You know what that means? That means it's a fucking war crime. And this is the first part of the fucking video. This isn't the beginning of the video. We're not even into the meat and potatoes of this video, and we've already covered 2 fucking war crimes. To establish an illegal use under the CCCW, an investigation into the intent behind the use of white phosphorus would be needed, which exceeds the mandate of the World Health Organization. So, for reference, it is not technically illegal to use it to illuminate the battlefield, as they put it there, as if it doesn't burn and burn and burn and burn everything in its fucking path. We're talking plants, we're talking animals, we're talking, anything that has oxygen in it. It's just going to keep burning through, and it's extremely hard to put out as well. Medical people who need to treat people who've been burned by this need to be second-hand prepared, because it might just start burning again mid-treatment or even after treatment. The fact that it's even allowed to be used on the battlefield is fucked up enough. Keep that in mind, because we're going to look at instances since October 7th where Israel has used white phosphorus. I'm just going to read out headlines to you guys from trusted sources, and you guys can, go and do your research, because as I've said, I am biased. I have no interest in, taking any, lenience for the Israeli cause. I've lived 29 years. I'm 29 years old. I am under no fucking illusion that that's an evil fucking state that does evil fucking things and gets away with war crimes almost all the fucking time, almost every year. Israel white phosphorus attacks on Lebanon, harming people and ecosystem. This isn't pre-October 7th, 2023. This is all after October 7th, 2023. It's not even being used on the people of Gaza. It's being used in fucking Lebanon. Why? Why is white phosphorus being used to attack Lebanon? Israel accused of using white phosphorus in Lebanon as potential for all-out war ratchets up. This is from the Times of Israel Rights Group. Israel using white phosphorus on residential buildings in Lebanon. Al Jazeera. Israel's toxic legacy, bombing southern Lebanon with white phosphorus. US investigating Israeli airstrikes in Gaza according to reports, and this report contains information about white phosphorus being used in Lebanon and Gaza. Just to be clear, that's 2 horrific war crimes. 1, killing of journalists, assassinating them and hunting down their families, and 2, the use of a WMD, or what I would consider a WMD, a weapon of mass destruction, like white phosphorus, on not even the people that you're having current beef with. The next section, I didn't really want to address because I'm so fucking tired of talking about it, but it's necessary to address because people won't shut the fuck up about it. So let's talk about religion for the millionth fucking time on my channel. When we think about how tensions are raised between Jewish people and Muslims throughout the discussion of this specific conflict, Israel and Palestine, I'm reminded, strangely enough, of the British partition in India, which started in 1947. And the British raised tensions between Muslims and Hindus, maintained to this very day. Muslims and Hindus still do not really get along because of the tensions created by Britain during partition. Palestine was a British mandate once. I am sick and tired of our people fighting over what British fucks in the past did to us. I'm so fucking sick and tired of people who are closer to us, even Jewish people are extremely close to us, as compared to like British people. When we learned about Jewish people in Islamic school, we always addressed them like they were our cousins. In like a spiritual sense, in like a religious sense, as Muslims. Like, they're like our cousins. They're close to us. I am sick and tired of people who are like me and are close to me fighting over what British fucks did in the past. I'm so fucking sick of it. Literally fucking over 2/3 of the world and making us fight amongst each other. It is so bluntly obvious to me that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict stems from like British fuckery. Let's take a little palate cleanser, because actually this is an interesting topic to talk about, and I feel like tangents will help in this video. I want to talk about my mum for a bit, and like, please be respectful. My mum is dead, okay? Everything she said can't really be taken back. She's dead as hell. Like, she's been dead for like 10 years. I remember having a conversation with my mum years and years and years ago at this point. And like, my mum used to say the funniest things. She was born, raised in Bangladesh. I was born in Bangladesh. She brought me to the UK like as a baby. And we were talking when I was a teenager. And I like to get on her nerves sometimes, because it was the only real time that we could really fully interact. Because like, I have a lot of siblings, like younger siblings. We were doing chores together, me and my mum. We were putting out some laundry, and I was getting on her nerves about like who I was gonna marry, because I was like a teenage girl. I was a Muslim girl. My mum was always really excited about getting me married off, whatever. And like, I was kind of pushing her buttons by going like, oh, what if I get married to a Pakistani guy? Like, would you be okay with me getting married to a Pakistani guy? And she flipped out. Like, she fully fucking flipped out. She was so mad. And at the time, I didn't really understand it. But she was so fucking mad. Like, she was refuting me. And it was clearly anger. But it was anger that was stemming from fear. Because one of the things that she said during that argument that really stuck with me was that she said, if you knew what Pakistani people did to Bengali people, you wouldn't be so eager to marry them. That like harkens back to what I was saying at the start of this video about like people's lived traumas, like staying with them and informing the way that they process information and disseminate information as well to their children, people around them. My mother's parents experienced like horrific acts of violence that were committed during the partition. Like, my grandparents went through that. So of course my mom has like very stark childhood memories of things that happened during that time. And of course she would hold that opinion. Like, I can't hold that against her, that she holds that opinion about Pakistani people, even though like, everyday Pakistani people probably wouldn't like genocide her or whatever. I don't know how to put this. It's such a contentious thing to talk about, but like, when I was talking to my mom about it, and obviously I was a dumb kid at the time, and when I was talking to her about it, I would always go like, aren't we the same people though? Like, we have the same brown skin, our food is pretty similar, we're all fucking Muslims, like Bengali people and Pakistani people, we're Muslims, like we're pretty fucking similar. And she would be like, no, absolutely not. They don't eat that similar to us. They don't act like us. They don't move like us. And for me, like, as a kid who was being raised in the UK, like, yeah, born in Bangladesh, but being raised in the UK, for me, I didn't really see much of a difference. So it was always really confusing to me. And I think the real kicker is the British fucked us up. They fucked us up such to the point that like, we're the same people. And we did horrific things to each other. Well, Pakistanis did to Bengalis. Under the advisement of fucked up British people. Who did fucked up shit all over the world. Everywhere. It was their bread and butter to do that. And it fucks me up deep, deep, deep inside. And this is just my opinion. That we keep fighting over stuff that we didn't start. We didn't fucking start. Those British fuckers did. Like, 100, 200 years ago, whatever. It fucks me up. I hate it. I don't know how better to explain that. Let's get back to talking about religion. I have a love-hate relationship with religion. I love studying it because I love learning where people come from and how they think and how they feel and stuff. But I hate talking about it because people are way too fucking serious about religion. They take it way too fucking seriously and they can't ever fucking relax. Religion should be personal to you. Like, I have no fucking problem if you believe in a religion. I am more of a, like, as you can fucking tell, a no masters, no gods kind of bitch. If you believe in something, like, I have no I have nothing against you. You can believe whatever religion you want to believe. I'd love to have a conversation about it with you, how you manage your life and stuff, believing the stuff you believe, what rituals you perform, like how it all works in your reality. Like I'm more than happy to understand that. Where it gets way too fucking ick for me with religion is when it starts getting into politics and like people's actual fucking lives. You can't tell other people what the fuck to believe inside themselves. So maybe don't do that. Believe what you're going to believe. Talk about it in like a group discussion with your classmates, with your friends, with your work friends. Be normal and not like try to impose things on people, because that's gross. It shouldn't be in politics at all. Religion is a personal thing and it should not be in politics at all. It should stay in as like a personal thing that you like discuss with family, with your friends, in society. Everyone should be able to believe whatever they want to believe as long as it's not hurting other people. It's not that hard, guys. It's really not that fucking hard. I don't understand what the big issue is. But that hasn't stopped religion from being entered into the political ring and entered to make political little movements and, brainwash people into doing stuff. Media outlets also use religion to demonize people. We'll play a small word association game, if you will. When I say the word terrorist, what's the first associated word that comes to mind? If it was Muslim, Islam, Islamist, or Islamism, congratulations, you've been played by post 9/11 rhetoric. Because guess what? You shouldn't immediately think that when I say the word terrorist. There have been times of turmoil everywhere. There have been terror attacks everywhere that all kinds of people commit. The fact that you immediately associate terrorist to Muslim or Islam or, thereabouts is really fucking telling. Because the media has like fed that into your brain for your brain to make that shortcut of you immediately thinking Muslim or Islam. You know how I told you earlier in the video that your brain makes shortcuts? That's one of them, if that happened to you. I'm not gonna make a case for Islam. Like, I feel like I've talked enough shit about Islam, what I feel about it and whatever. It should be noted that all religions have and can be weaponized to like do bad things to other people. Once you're presented with an authority figure where they're telling you to do something that you don't necessarily agree with, it's easy to pass the buck to them and be like, oh, well, he told me to do it, so that's why I did it. Your brain isn't like prepared to always debate everyone. Some of you are, but you guys are perverted and I don't know what's wrong with you. Oh, why did this fucked up thing happen? And then you're like, oh, because John from fucking whatever the fuck chapel came over and decided, oh, this biblical verse needed to be put into law. Shut up. Nobody cares what your fictional book says. You can believe it's the best thing since sliced bread. Keep it in your house. Keep it on your coffee table. Don't put it into law. There seems to be this like wildly held assumption that Islam is somehow like nominal in the way that it romanticizes martyrdom and war. I think I saw like a clip of Richard Dawkins saying that like, oh, Christianity is like a civilized religion. Do you need reminding in this region? In the Israel-Palestine region? Do you know how many fucking crusades there have been? How many religiously led crusades there have been? It's disputed, firstly. There's 8 at a very fucking minimum. There's 8 that Christianity has declared on like where Israel and Palestine currently are. Holy wars. Literally called holy wars. Christianity was one of the most fucked up religions in terms of like Inquisition, fucking witch burnings, fucking torture devices, and like elaborate manners of like execution and punishment. Like devices were built within churches. Let's not pretend that Christianity is like this holy fucking, peaceful ass fucking religion and Islam is this demon for being used in demonic ways when Christianity has been used in like almost exactly the same way at this rate, thousands of years. Oh, you don't understand, like they're hyper religious in Palestine and that's why Israel has to do this. No. Most of the world is conservative. People are hyper-religious almost everywhere. You do not have that opinion of all, like, religious people around the world. Not all Muslim people, not all, other kinds of religious people, religious Christians or whatever. You don't have that opinion about them, but you have that energy for Palestine. Fuck you. Religion can always be cited to dehumanize others and create violence because religions emerge in tension periods of history. Gloss over any history of any religion. They always emerge in tension periods of history. And that's why, like, it can be so easily used to manipulate people, because people hold religion really close to them. Like, spirituality should be kept personal and it should just stay out of politics. The next part of this video, points of this occupation and genocide that I literally cannot look past. And I don't know how anyone on the Zionist supporting side can. I literally can't understand it. Some of the most vulnerable people in society are children. So the next part of this video is going to be talking about Gaza's children. As of October 2023, the children in Gaza make up nearly half of Gaza's population. Children make up nearly half of Gaza's population, and here's what it means for the war. 2/3 of the Palestinians living in Gaza are refugees or their descendants from the 1948 war, and most of the population is Muslim. There is also a small native Palestinian Christian population that everyone happily just ignores because no one wants to talk about that. Since 2007, Gaza has been under a strict land and sea blockade by Israel. That's 2007 that's happened from, okay? So can we not act like the Palestinian people have like equal human rights to the rest of us? They've literally been under a land and sea blockade by Israel since 2007, okay? I just find it so bizarre that people can ignore things like this about the Palestinian people when talking about Palestine. Like, how do you ignore that? The fact that they can't get normal food, medicine, and water easily because they're literally under a blockade. All of their imports and outports are strictly controlled by a different nation. Since 2007, Gaza has been under a strict land and sea blockade by Israel that prevents civilians, along with goods like food and medicine, from easily moving across the border, contributing to harsh economic conditions and high poverty levels. Why do children make up such a large portion of the population? The reasons are varied. Many Palestinians simply don't get the chance to grow old, dying in their early adulthood, either in conflicts or due to a struggling healthcare system, which drags the averages down. The 16-year blockade has hampered fast access to medical care and caused shortages of essential supplies like gauze and IV bags, says Yara Asi, a assistant professional of global health management and informatics at the University of Central Florida and the author of the upcoming book How War Kills. Preventative care is basically non-existent, she said. They're constantly dealing with short-term health issues, and those that need chronic care either don't get it or have to leave. And to be able to leave for medical treatment, residents have to apply for a permit that's notoriously difficult to obtain. Another factor for the young population in Gaza is that people tend to marry in their earlier 20s, according to 2021 data by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics, and the fertility rate, births per woman, is 3.138 according to a US Census Bureau estimate. This is compared to a 1.84 in the US. So on average, women have roughly 3 or 4 children, whereas in the US, women have 1 or 2 children. Blaming the population of Gaza for the rise of Hamas also, which is an argument that I've seen a lot online. Oh, well, you should not feel so sorry for the Palestinian people because they voted Hamas in. Whatever. Blaming the population of Gaza for Hamas is so fucking stupid in my opinion, because most of the people who are currently living and dying there as of October 7th, 2023 didn't fucking vote them into power, because half of them are children. The statistics about children in Gaza since October 7th have been horrific. Again, all of these will be linked in the description below. Gaza, rate of attacks on healthcare higher than in any other conflict globally since 2018. Becky Platt, a pediatric nurse at the hospital, said, "We've recently seen an influx of children from other hospitals with wounds and lost limbs, often needing skin grafting and multiple operations. But even getting hold of simple things like strong pain relief is a major challenge. When children have to undergo a procedure to save their limb and avoid infection, we are forced to do it with less pain relief than we'd normally use. So I brought bubbles and games on my phone to distract them, but the reality is that a lot of these procedures need strong pain relief that is causing huge distress, and it will also add a long-term psychological damage. Additionally, when pain relief isn't given in a circumstance where it's required for surgery, a lot of the time, especially children, can die of just shock. Like, they can just die because the pain is too much. And their body goes into shock and they just... Like, these are the circumstances that Zionists will say is fine because Hamas. Like, in what world is this fine? In what world is children going through this fine? It's not fine for the adults to be going through, the adult civilians to be going through this as well. But since we have to justify the humanity of Palestinians, what the fuck? This Dr. Becky Platt also added, "We treated a 10-year-old boy who had some shrapnel in his thigh that had shattered his femur. He lost a lot of muscle and tissue, so he needed skin grafting and also an external fixator on the leg. He had multiple operations, but he was so distressed by the way his leg looked that he couldn't even look at it. He was doing this silent crying that was heartbreaking, but this is a standard story. Children are psychologically destroyed by everything that's happened." There's a few more bits, no trigger warning, because honestly, they have to go through it, so the least we can do is hear about it. Doctors in Gaza say that a large part of their surgery is on children, and that the lack of food available often means that patients are not strong enough to heal properly or fight off infection. At least 28 children have died already because of malnutrition and dehydration, according to the Ministry of Health in Gaza. And this was an article released on the 22nd of April, 2024. Last month. Dr. Simon Struthers, a pediatrician at the field hospital in Rafah, said, "We see acute respiratory infections, malnutrition cases, scabies, hepatitis A. I've seen more jaundice in the last 2 weeks than I have in my whole career. We treat many children with acute gastroenteritis, one type that spreads via fecal routes. Hand washing would reduce this, but now everyone is displaced, living in tents, and unfortunately overcrowding and lack of sanitation or clean water increase the risks. How are you supposed to wash your hands when there's no fucking clean water?" It's so fucking infuriating. Chronic pediatric problems are extremely challenging, says Dr. Simon Struthers. Cerebral palsy, for example, or similar diseases that can't be treated. Everything is on pause, including standard operations. Simon explained, adding that the lack of medicines like steroid creams and antibiotic ointments hampers the treatment of simple diseases. The lack of security further compounds the challenges in accessing healthcare services. Israeli forces have hit ambulances, medical aid convoys, and access roads. Hospitals have become battlefields, and the World Health Organization said that between mid-October and the end of March, over half of their missions in Gaza have been denied, delayed, impeded, or postponed. I'm trying to keep a neutral fucking tone because I'm getting fucking angry. Dr. Simon added, "We can't take risks and have to be careful with which route we take because of what's going on, and we're fearful of what's coming from Israeli forces rather than the local population, who are very supportive of us. We're constantly reminded of the risks, and our staff spend some evenings learning how to use trauma dressings and tourniquets in case they are needed." Another doctor, Javier Joubert, Save the Children's county director in the occupied Palestinian territory, said, "After 6 months of unimaginable terror, the healthcare system in Gaza has been brought to its knees. Healthcare workers are risking their lives daily to give Palestinian children a chance at survival. The constant attacks on healthcare are simply unjustifiable and must stop. Palestinian children must have unimpeded access to service, including healthcare and education." I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry in this fucking video. I know if I cry in this video, everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, see, she's such a weak little bitch talking about the Palestinian cause." Like, how do people not have any humanity for Palestinians? I'll never fucking understand. I will never fucking understand. We're going to talk about something that's even more fucking depraved in regards to children. So yeah, we're gonna read through this because, believe it or not, they're actively going through this, and it hurts me to read it, and I believe it should hurt because they're literally living like this. So this CNN article has the headline, "More than 10 children lose legs in Gaza every day as dire health crisis grows," aid group says. And there was a press release released by the New Yorker in their Dispatch series, I think it's called. And the title of it is "The Children Who Lost Limbs in Gaza." And the subheading is "More than 1,000 children who were injured in the war are now amputees. What do their futures hold?" And this is written by Elise Griswold on March 22nd, 2024, so 2 months ago. UNICEF estimates that 1,000 children in Gaza have become amputees since the conflict began in October. This is the biggest cohort of pediatric amputees in history. Ghassan Abu Sita, a London-based plastic and reconstructive surgeon who specializes in pediatric trauma, told me recently. "I met him in the waiting room of his plastic surgery clinic on London's Harley Street, and we walked to a nearby pub for a glass of water." Abu Sita, a 54-year-old British Palestinian with an angular face and tender, deep-set eyes, has treated child survivors of war for the past 30 years in Iraq, Yemen, Syria, and elsewhere. In Gaza, Abu Sita was performing as many as 6 amputations a day. "Sometimes you have no other medical option," he explained. "The Israelis had surrounded the blood bank so we couldn't do transfusions. If a limb was bleeding profusely, we had to amputate. The dearth of basic medical supplies owing to blockades also contributed to the number of amputations. Without the ability to irrigate a wound immediately in an operating room, infection and gangrene often set in. Every war wound is considered dirty," Karin Huster, a nurse who leads medical teams in Gaza for Doctors Without Borders, told me. "It means that many get a ticket to the operating room. For children who've experienced extreme loss, and such hypervigilance is common," Salsabil Zaid, a psychologist working with children and families at the compound, told me. "Many of the child amputees in Doha suffer from depression, anxiety, trouble concentrating, restlessness, nausea, trouble sleeping, anxiety attacks, and hopelessness," she said. "They're really tearful and guilt-ridden," she added. "The children suffer from a form of survivor's guilt because, unlike friends and family members, they've walked into another country and their basic needs are met." We're gonna do a speed run of a response to the "Israel has a right to defend itself" claim, and I really want you to consider if the following can really be considered defense. And I'm just going to be reading out the news source and the headline. And you can decide for yourselves, I guess, because this is clearly a decision that needs to be made and not like a clear-cut example of people being killed en masse. Human Rights Watch released an article saying, "Gaza, Israel's imposed starvation deadly for children." The Guardian published a news article that says Israel is deliberately starving Palestinians, UN rights expert says. ABC News published, "More than 500,000 people in Gaza face catastrophic hunger," according to UNRWA. A Guardian article, "Flooding Hamas tunnels with seawater risks ruining basic life in Gaza." Al Jazeera, "Barely a drop, UN warns water shortages a deadly risk for Gaza's children." The Guardian, "We have no choice, illness in Gaza as clean water becomes a luxury." Al Jazeera, "Satellite images reveal Israeli destruction of hospitals in Gaza." Doctors Without Borders, "Gaza, how the Israeli army besieged and attacked Nasser Hospital." CNN, "Doctors accuse Israeli troops of desecrating bodies and shooting civilians at hospital. Israel says that was Hamas command center." A French paper called Le Monde says, "All 12 universities in Gaza have been the target of Israeli attacks. It's a war against education," in quotes, as the newspaper says. From The National, "War on education, Israel's destruction of Gaza universities to set strip back decades." Literary Hub, "Israel has damaged or destroyed at least 13 libraries in Gaza." Al Jazeera, "How Israel has destroyed Gaza's schools and universities." Euromed Human Rights Monitor, "Israel kills dozens of academics, destroys every university in the Gaza Strip." The National. A war on Palestinian narrative and memory. Israeli strikes leave Gaza heritage in ruins. NPR. Israeli strikes leave Gaza's oldest mosque in ruins. Middle East Monitor. Israeli army destroyed more than 200 archaeological sites in Gaza. A report. Do you remember how I said that, like, Gaza's population is almost 50-50 in that 50% are children? Yeah. I'd like to report to you that Gaza's population in total is roughly 2.2 million. That's 1.1 million children. That's 1.1 million children that depraved and bloodthirsty Zionists believe just, deserve to die because they're Palestinian. If you can't tell, I've clearly had enough. I want to show you some clips as well, because I feel like obviously I'm telling stories from doctors and Palestinian people who've been on the ground since October 7th in Gaza, but I also want to share some clips of a man named Khalid who lost his grandchildren early, I think in like October or November. I'm not entirely sure when this happened, but every time I watch these clips, and I'm not going to view them now, but I'll have my editor put them in.
روح الروح هذه روح الروح هذه روح الروح الله وين طارق
Pigtails in a pink striped shirt. Why won't your eyes stay open? I looked into them one last time. I tried. I kissed your forehead and the whole world watched. I know, fate is for too cool. I know, this isn't where I leave you. You'll stay with me wherever I go. My life is yours. You'll stay with me wherever I go. The soul of my soul.
The family was asleep when an airstrike nearby brought down their house in southern Gaza last week. Khalid woke up screaming for his children and grandchildren, struggling to walk in the dark and through the wreckage to find them.
ما شفت ولا واحد فيهم كل هذا عليهم
I couldn't find anyone. They were buried underneath all this rubble, he says. My daughter Mesa was here. Her children, Reem and Tarek, were here in her arms. Mesa and her sister barely survived. After a few days in intensive care, they're now recovering at a relative's house. I felt something heavy on top of me. I started screaming, Mesa says. I heard Reem screaming next to me. I told her, there's something heavy on top of me. I can't reach you. I said my final prayers, and next I woke up in the hospital. Mesa woke up to the news her 3- and 5-year-old children were gone, their lifeless bodies found together under the rubble. They slept next to each other that night. They slept early, she says. I told them to stay up a little longer, but they said they wanted to sleep. At the hospital, I was just numb, she says. I hugged them. I wanted to get as many hugs as I could. No matter how much I hugged them, I didn't get enough. Their final days lived in a war they were too young to understand. Why they no longer could dress up, go out and play, or get their favorite treats. With their father abroad working, they lived with their grandfather. Reem was so attached to him, and he spoiled her. They kept asking for fruit, but there's no fruit because of the war, he says. I could only find them these tangerines. Khalid holds the tangerine he gave Reem, the one she didn't get to eat, and pinned close to his heart, her tiny earring. He breaks down as he remembers their final evening, how his grandchildren begged him to take them out to play. But he couldn't. Airstrikes were everywhere. Khalid says he's not a fighter. They had nothing to do with the war, but like so many in Gaza, his family paid the price. Khalid held Reem in his arms for one last time. He hugged her motionless body, opened her eyes, and kissed her goodbye. I was asking her to kiss me like she used to, but she didn't, he says. I used to kiss her on her cheeks, on her nose, and she would giggle. I kissed her, but she wouldn't wake up, he recalls. I held Tariq. I fixed his hair the way he liked it. I was wishing, hoping they were only sleeping, he says, but they weren't sleeping. They're gone. Gone a month before her 4th birthday, a birthday Reem shared with her grandfather. She was the soul of my soul, Khalid says. Jumana Karachi, CNN, London.
Every time I view these clips, I can't fucking handle it. It makes me cry. Even thinking about it makes me cry. Because, for me, I'm largely estranged from my family. And some of my best memories of my family are memories I had with either of my grandfathers, my nana, my dada. And, just from their normal everyday, they taught me so much and told me so many stories and bought me so many gifts. For grandparents, their grandchildren are their whole fucking lives sometimes. And it really fucking kills me that, Reem won't ever have that. His granddaughter will never fucking have those memories with him, because she's dead. And he'll never have those memories with her, because he literally held her corpse and said goodbye. The level of horrific that this... I will never understand. I will never understand. A last and final point that I would like to address is honestly the most frustrating one, and I'm hoping the worst of the worst have stuck around to hear my response to this, because they're going to be so dissatisfied with the 7-minute clip that I have loaded. But it's the whole, do you condemn Hamas? I hate this question, and I don't think I could give a better answer to the question than has already been given by a TikToker, I believe he is, called Roobtube maybe? I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that. But he answered it best on GB News, and I'm going to ask that my editor puts in the whole 7-minute clip, because I felt so fucking seen when he said those things. And for those of you who this video resonates with you, I want you to feel that. I want you to feel seen, what we're coming up to as the end of the video, okay?
People are dying and I'm acting apparently. Thank you, Esther.
I'm now joined by pro-Palestine activist and social media influencer, Jube. So tell us, why are you taking to the streets?
Can I just quickly apologise for wearing a hat in the studio? I don't want to be disrespectful. I've just got a terrible hairline. OK.
Don't you worry. I would have coped with your hairline, but I really wanted to know why you're taking to the streets.
Right. The reason I'm taking to the streets is because there are children dying, there are mothers dying, there are fathers dying. On both sides, you know, people are being affected by what I can only describe as barbarism from both sides. So I need to go out and speak and try and get a message out to the youth to let them know that the Palestinians need their voice.
And we'll all agree with that blood is being shed quite unnecessarily. Young people, adults losing their lives. So you, therefore, must condemn Hamas here live on this TV show for the atrocious attacks of the 7th of October.
Sure.
And, you know, that's what you say. Are you going to say it? Yes.
Sorry, ask the question again.
Hamas.
Do I condemn Hamas is the question, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't condemn Hamas. I want them to kill everybody.
Well,
is that the soundbite you wanted? Death to America! Of course I condemn it. I condemn the violence on both sides. Right. So I can't believe... I've seen this on TikTok. I can't believe you actually started with, do you condemn Hamas? What do you think? Do you think I'm Hamas?
Right, look, you're not on TikTok now. I know TikTok. You're obviously, you know...
OK, let me ask you a question. Do you condemn Israel?
I'm condemning people who...
Do you condemn Israel is the question.
Hang on a second. You're here to answer the questions.
Yeah, sure, but if you're going to ask silly questions, I can ask them too.
And I didn't ask silly questions. I'm glad to hear that you have condemned Hamas.
What did you expect me to say?
Hamas. Well,
of course I condemn the death of innocents.
That's right.
Release the hostages, but also release the Palestinian hostages. 15,000 of them. Actually, sorry, my bad. There's 2 million of them in Gaza and another 3 million in the West Bank. If we want to talk about hostages, how dare you insinuate that I'm a terrorist? Because that's what you're trying to do.
I'm not doing anything.
What do you mean by do you condemn Israel? Do you condemn Hamas?
You are talking, you know,
come on
your own.
That is so unfair.
No, nothing is unfair.
People in my family are dying, and if you are.
Both sides they are, and what we need to do, in a sensible way, is how do we resolve this? How do we resolve this matter? And when you have people like the ex-Hamas foreign secretary saying we want to annihilate Israel and we want to bring more October the 7th attacks,
I think that's
how
terrible.
do we therefore get to peace and a solution?
With all due respect, I know it's your show, but I'm not going to let you just gloss over what you just tried to do.
I'm not glossing over.
May I speak without being interrupted, please?
Yes, and you have for a while.
So what you've just done is start off just like every other racist media publication. This is supposed to be an accredited media source. You're interrupting me again. Can I speak?
Please,
May I speak?
May
I speak?
Yes, you can.
Okay, this is supposed to.
You are.
This is supposed to be an accredited media source, right?
It is.
Okay, so have you seen how you guys report on the protests? Have you seen it? What you type in, everyone at home, type in GB News Palestine. Tell me if it's not the most sensationalistic coverage of the protests that you've ever seen in your life. The only things these guys are doing is trying to get clicks, and they're trying to fool you and hoodwink you into thinking that we're animals and that we're racist and we support terrorist organisations.
Look, the only person who wants clicks is you, because you do, as you said.
Yeah, I do want clicks.
Exactly.
Do you know why? Do you know why? Because there is unfair representation by the British media. Check out GB News Palestine. It's racism at its core.
How dare you think there is extremism in some of your groups?
Of course. My groups? What do you mean by my groups? Arabs, Muslims, content creators?
In the ones that have taken the streets. Listen. In 100,000 in the last weekend.
Of course there are. There is extremism in every facet of the world. If someone headbutted a police officer at the football, should we ban football for the weekend? Should we call all people that go to the football games violence and thugs? No, we shouldn't. So what you've done is disingenuous. You started with, do you condemn Hamas? For what reason? To frame the conversation in a light that I am sympathetic with terrorists. Did you know that my family are dying in this conflict? So let me ask you a question. Do you condemn Israel? Do you condemn Israel? You asked me if I condemn Palestine, right? Because I'm a terrorist sympathiser. Do you condemn Israel for what they're doing?
I believe Israel has the right to defend itself.
Do you condemn them?
Okay,
but do you condemn them for killing innocents? Be fair here. Esther, I've been fair. Be fair. Do you condemn them for killing innocents?
I'm saying the only way forward is to make sure we don't have the terrorist attacks that we did. And I'm asking you, because you're taking to the streets, and I'm asking you, the streets of the UK, and I'm asking, how do we then get this peace settlement you want, both sides? How are we going to do it? Give us your answer. answer.
The first thing we'll do is we'll have to sack off any media publications that pretend that they're trying to speak the truth. But in actual fact, that what they want to do is divide us. I think you're amazing, Esther. I really do. You're actually one of the best at GB News. I'm sorry if I've seemed aggressive. My family are dying. And when you start off with a question like that, what that does is frame the conversation in a light that I'm a bad person.
So,
and you know it. Don't be disingenuous. You're too smart.
No, listen, my final question to you. When Hamas did those strikes on the 7th of October, did they know, and they must have realised, what the retaliation was going to be by Israel?
Do you think I'm Hamas?
No, I'm asking about the incident, and you're here to talk about
what
the
connection
incident.
With Hamas
No,
do
listen.
I have?
I'm saying they must have known that what the retaliation would be, so they have put, Hamas has put both the lives of Israelis and Palestinians at risk. Is that right?
I would agree with you. I think they have done that. But would you also agree? See, look how I answer your questions. Now, please offer me the same thing. Just answer the question. What about what Israel are doing? Would you say that they've put the lives of Israelis and Jews all over the world by ethnically cleansing, by kicking people out of their homes, by and you know this is a fact, continuously lying online?
Hang on. Please don't put things as fact, continuously lying online.
So is it not... Okay, is it not a...
What they've done is
this is so
defend
unfair.
themselves.
This is so unfair. It is unfair because what you're trying to... What you're doing...
It's not unfair,
what you're doing,
but I want to thank you for coming in.
Of course you do. All right, have a nice day, guys. Thank you for letting me come in. I don't get to answer a bloody question. She gets to lambast me with bullshit and paint me as a terrorist. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Hang on.
Where's the free media? Is this media?
You're doing
Let me get out. I take the mic off. Have a nice day. Have a nice day.
You're doing a wonderful job.
I'm acting. People are dying, and I'm acting, apparently. Thank you, Esther. Thank you for having me on your show. Barely answering any of my questions. Get this mic off me, bro. This is racism 101. Have a nice day, Esther.
You've done...
I hope that sums it all up for you. I'd like to end on a little bit of a palate cleanser and some calls to action. As I mentioned, I love studying religion, and I have always maintained through my religious journey, through my, madrasa days, through my Islamic school days, that the best character in Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic faiths, so let's just call them Abrahamic faiths, the best figure, in my opinion, is Moses, or Musa alayhi salam. I haven't said those words in years. Musa is my favorite guy in, whichever telling you'd like to refer to of the prophets that have been sent, given a message by God or whatever. He's the best one. He's my favorite one. He's always been my favorite. Even in the days where I was hyper-religious and people would be like, Muhammad's the greatest prophet of all time. Nah, he doesn't hold a candle to Moses, in my opinion. Moses is the best prophet. Fight me. At me, fight me. He's the best prophet. I mainly love him because the angel of death came to him and told him, it's your time to die. And Moses was like, no, it's not. I haven't reached Jerusalem yet. And knocked his eye out. That's why I mainly love him. He's my favorite for that specific reason. But I also love him because he was raised in the home of a ruler that was enslaving and oppressing his people. He rejected that life and wandered the desert, then came back, demanded the freedom of his people, and eventually led his people to freedom from oppression. And I think that narrative really fits here, and I understand that you can skew this story in either direction of this conflict, but hopefully I've presented to you that there's clearly an oppressive force and one that's being oppressed, and where that story should apply should be obvious to you if it's not. But anyway, continue to boycott. The money that you make every day, the money that I make, already came to me with blood on it. I don't think any of the money we have in our banks, in our hands, is clean, unless it's been freshly minted. Don't put it back into red hands. Boycott, businesses that support this occupation. Continue to demand an end to Israel's occupation. Write to your MPs. I know it's kind of futile because Labour has gone down the gutter and it feels like a lot of people aren't listening, but the more you put pressure, the more it does add up. And check out all the links in the description. I've compiled them from different links that I've seen online, and hopefully all of them are legit. I'll triple check them before I put them there, but they would be links for financial support to different Palestinian causes. Thank you very much for watching this video. I know it could have been a slightly stressful watch for some of you, but I do appreciate that you've sat down to hear what I have to say, and I hope that most of it resonated with the lot of you that stuck around to watch it. If you would like to discuss parts of it, please feel free to leave your comments in the comments below, and be kind to each other in the comments. I will have no bloodthirsty bullshit in the comments. Like, I really won't. I really don't. So, small update. I discovered something. I was supposed to record this video last week, and I didn't. So this video hasn't gone into editing yet. But recently some articles came out about how the Israeli military knew about Hamas's plans to take hostages on October 7th, like a year in advance. I have been questioning, mainly on Twitter, which is the worst place, I know, but like mainly on Twitter, I've been questioning how Hamas fighters were able to paraglide over the border without Israel noticing, and I've got my answer, because Israel knew a year in advance. I'm not going to read the whole article. I've got screenshots of an article that I've taken off Business Insider, and there's another article that came out, I think, from a different source. I'll have to have a look. But the one that I'm referencing is from Business Insider, and I've got screenshots of it. You can have a read of it yourself. I had to go through a fucking paywall to read it. Yeah, I don't know what to say to you. You have, and this is directly at Israel as a country, your whole country has to do military service. Okay, so all the adults in your country have served in the military. You get this intelligence a year in advance that Hamas are going to paraglide over your borders and take your own people hostage. And you what? You ignored that? What the fuck is going on with this country exactly? I don't know what to think of you. You seem to be a really poor excuse for a country, honestly. Yeah, I have no well wishes for you. Good luck. It's just good luck with everything. You have military intelligence that you ignore for a year. It comes to pass and suddenly you feel justified to just like declare retribution on innocent civilians. Like, that's so fucked up. That's so fucked up. And I really, like, this really solidifies the point that I can't take depraved and bloodthirsty Zionists seriously. Like, I genuinely cannot.